With the Northern Ireland Prison Service. Let me tell you about my job. There's lots of variety, like driving, using modern equipment, escorting prisoners to court, but mostly dealing with people. I work with great mates, and I'm earning over £80 a week, and that's without overtime. The prison service needs people. People like you. Get the facts. Send the coupon from your newspaper now.
Since 1971, virtually every adult in the nationalist ghettos had been arrested and interrogated at least once. In 1978, there were over 3,000 men and women in prisons and prison camps in Ireland and Britain, the largest one being Long Kesh, just outside of Belfast. Through the years, nationalist prisoners have struggled repeatedly using hunger strikes, prison insurrections and escapes in order to assert their rights as prisoners of war. Rights which were recognised by the British government before March 1976, but which have since been denied to all nationalists arrested after that date.
So when internment was introduced in 1971, there was a spontaneous reaction by the nationalist people to this particular repressive measure, which allowed the Republican Army to re-accelerate its war, and the main emphasis within that war was an economic bombing strategy. And the whole emphasis of the armed struggle was a destabilization program to prevent politics, as it had manifested itself within the occupied North, from stabilizing itself and consolidating some sort of base for itself. And that because most of the political parties were already backed by commercial interests, the best way of obtaining that destabilization was with an economic bombing strategy.
It's very difficult to suggest any particular security action that can avoid this kind of thing. This particular devastation apparently was caused by a lorry hijacked in Joy Street yesterday. Now there must be some people who saw the hijackers. There must be some people who know who's involved in this bombing. I doubt very much whether there are very many people organizing this. I doubt whether there are very many people taking part in it. But it is high time that every citizen of Northern Ireland, quite irrespective of religion, quite irrespective of politics, came forward and said, I have information. And that, in my view, is the only adequate means of dealing with this sort of situation.
How about the SDLP? How do you feel about them?
Pegs, but don't feel anything about them. A lot of stone.
Is there anybody in this part of Belfast that you place your confidence in?
Yes, the provies.
As the war accelerated after internment, the nationalists not only rejected government authority, but also the moderate nationalist parties who still hoped to reform the state. Bypassing the politicians, they began to deal directly with the problems faced by the community. This meant building parks and daycare centres for children, as well as meeting places for the elderly in areas which had never had the slightest social services. Neighbourhood people's assemblies were formed to solve housing, unemployment and other day-to-day problems. All this activity culminated with the formation of entire self-governing areas that became known as Free Derry and Free Belfast. The large nationalist community in Derry refused to pay rents and taxes to the Unionist government, and the police and army were kept out of the area by barricades openly manned by the IRA. In effect, Derry had seceded from Northern Ireland. On October 11th, 1969, there were riots in the Loyalist districts of Belfast. So the city government took the public buses off the road. 3 days later, they were rolling again in Loyalist areas. But it was 3 months before bus service was restored to the nationalist ghettos. Forced back upon their own resources, some enterprising local people went over to England and began bringing back second-hand taxis. This was the beginning of the Falls Taxi Association, the People's Taxis.
Well, only for the taxis, I don't think any of us would have went to work because there's no buses on the road. Turf Lodge buses off the road, the White Rock Road buses off the road, and it's about 2 miles to walk down to the White Rock Road. So you'd be late for work, so we wouldn't be in.
I got the taxis too, and when the troubles along,
Yeah.
I got them too,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
there's any trouble even on the phone, so they can always get a
Get
taxi up
taxi.
too.
That's all.
That's all we got to
Yeah.
talk about.
The taxi men are very obliged.
We could point out that the Falls Taxi Association is now among the biggest self-help organisation in the north of Ireland. We now have 350 drivers, 450 persons self-employed, actually working on the routes that we have specified before. The media treat us very unkindly with the fact that in Newry, for instance, the second highest unemployed town in the north of Ireland, where the Minister of Commerce got 7 minutes on the national news and in the national press to the effect that he had created 15 jobs. And he stated that it cost £17,000 to create a job for one person in Northern Ireland. Yet we have never received any credibility or acknowledgement from any source to the fact that we have created 350 jobs, permanent jobs for people that, because of the areas where they live, the nationalist ghettos, they can't find employment anywhere else. They have to remain in the areas.